to build this console table. Check out the video to see how we did it. We'll start the project with what holds this table up, which are the legs. So we used 1.5 inch boards, planed them up, and glued 2 of them together to get 3 by 3. And of course we made 4 of them. And I used a mishmash of all the clamps I had available to glue them all together, and this made 4 separate legs. After cleaning them up with the table saw and the planer, I'm just doing a thorough inspection to make sure there's no holes or anything like that, or any areas that may not be properly glued, just so we don't have any problems later on, and making sure they're nice, square, and flat as well. Here I'm just marking some low spots or some areas of concern that I might fix, knots that might need to be glued. Now that we've completed the legs, it's time to move on to the tabletop. So using the planer here to get the main board set and ready. And I made it in several pieces. I made the top in several pieces. I took the core piece that is around 12 inches. And I did it this way because my planer is only limited to 13 inches. So I did a main part in the middle with a frame around it, and I'm using the pocket holes here just to speed up the process of glue up. That way it holds it all together and lets the glue set properly, because I don't have all the clamps that are necessary to hold a piece like this together. So I decided to go with the pocket holes, and I'm also using the biscuit joiner here for the corners of the frame as well. And then all that's left for the top is just to glue it up and put the pocket hole screws through, and keeping everything nice and flat and flush so that it makes a nice tabletop. Now this project was completed before I had the Flat Master drum sander. If you're interested in knowing about the drum sander, I'll leave a link above now or down below in the description. And so I had to use my belt sander here to try to get it nice and smooth, and get all the glue off and whatnot to do the initial sanding. And then of course we used the regular orbital sander and everything else, but that was just to do a cleanup. The Flat Master would have been a great asset at this point. Now here I'm using the tabletop to figure out the dimensions for the lower level, lower shelf. And that way I can figure out where the legs are going to be in the look, and just makes the measuring so much easier than to try and do it all calculations and on paper. So now we're just cutting the wood that are required for the lower shelf. And Brendan here is doing a good job on the chop saw. And for those who follow our channel, we have the R4520, which this is not. This is our old table saw, the Ryobi portable saw that we had before we bought the R4520 from Rigid. And here I'm doing the cutouts for the legs for the lower shelf, using my really old saw. Definitely need to get a new one. This one I use for everything, but it does the job. Once again, we're using the pocket holes for the side of the shelves because at that time we did not have very many clamps and it wouldn't have worked out very well. Here I'm just pre-drilling the tabletop to accept dowels, because I'll make dowels to hold the legs into place into the tabletop so they don't twist. I'll also be using the skirt or apron of the table to hold the legs nice and square as well, which I'm adding here. Again, just adding them with pocket hole screws. A lot of pocket hole screws in this project, I know. Again, lacking some tools at the time, and pocket holes, we wouldn't have been able to do this project probably without the pocket hole screws. So yeah, we're just using the little pocket hole jig that we have there. We didn't have the big jig or anything like that, so it's still affordable to make a table like this just using good old little pocket holes and like a $30 little Craig jig for those to make the holes. So at this point, you just want to make sure everything is nice and square, that the cuts are all nice and square, and if that is the case, then everything assembles nicely and makes the job a whole lot easier later when we have to put the drawers in. It's time to put the lower shelf, so I'm just using clamps to sort of mark where the lower shelf needs to be, and that way it'll hold it all nicely in place. Then I fine tune it to the line once I have the shelf in place there. This is just to sort of hold it pretty close to where it needs to be. But I can fine tune it once I have the shelf in there in a second. And if we did it all properly, it should fit in there all nice and snug and square. And to pull it all together, again, not having enough clamps, I'm using pocket hole screws to hold it in place. And I think off video, I don't think I caught it, is that I did add some hardware underneath there as well, so like a little angle brace, just to make sure that it'll hold the weight of anything people might put on there. And we're moving on to the drawers and the drawer holders. So in this table, I'm not using metal sliders. I'm going to do old-fashioned wood sliders because it is just an antique type of look to this design. So why not go with the old way of having sliders for the drawers? So that's what we're doing here. Just getting all the pieces ready for the dividers and things like that, using our little belt sander from our Hobie here, just to sort of taper the edges, soften the edges, again trying to get the sort of rustic or antique look to it. Here we're prepping the boards for the front and back of the drawers. You can see that board was pretty warped, unfortunately, but I think I was using those for the back. I'll be getting them straightened out at some point. We're using the router here to make our grooves for the drawers. Just setting the height, depth, and all that kind of stuff. Do some testing here. And for the sides of the drawers, I'm using these cedar boards that I had for a long time, and they're about 3/8 thickness. So I'm just cutting those all to length for the sides of each drawer. And here I'm going to be cutting the grooves for putting the base in. It's 1/4 inch plywood. And we're just going to cut the remaining base pieces, and then we can move on to assembly of the drawers. Now for the side pieces, of course, the 3/8 was too thin to be able to put a groove in it, so I actually glued on, and I didn't capture that, but I glued on little ledges for the base to sit on. Really not the ideal way to make a drawer, but it does work, or did work, I should say. And again, they're holding up quite well. The way this was made, hold it all together, making sure everything is squared, and a little bit of glue and some brad nails holds it all together. And here I'm making the parts that will be where the drawers will be sliding on, so the sliders, I guess you would call them. And so that still has to be put into the table, so it's just making sure that I get the right measurements before I put all the drawers together. But yeah, it's very simple. I'm going to use again pocket hole screws so that I can screw them into the table and then slide in the drawers. All right, so I'm putting these sliders in. Of course, the key again, once again, is to ensure that it's all nice and square and flush and stays together. It would be helpful if I had better clamps again, just to make sure it all holds nice and straight. But with the pocket hole screws, it does work quite easily to make sure that it all slides together properly. All right, now we're already moving on to decorative aspects of the piece of furniture. That is the drawer fronts. We decided to put somewhat of a frame around the drawer fronts just to give it a little extra character. And that's what I'm doing here. Instead of buying trim at the store, I'm just making them myself here at the with the router table. And then we're just going to attach them with some brad nails and some glue. I'm using the hand saw, miter saw, to get a little bit more precision on the angles. So here we're just gluing them on, and then I'll use the brad nailer to, of course, hold it in place until the glue sets, making sure everything's nice and square looking. I will sand them down again afterwards. Here I'm using the hand plane just to round off the edges for the sides, just to give it a smoother feel to it, as well as on the bottom to help with the sliding, so that it slides nicely. Little added screws here just to hold it all together a little bit stronger, and this is what it's looking like as we start putting it all together. Now we decided to put a little bit of a decorative accent as well on the top, so where the joints are, just not going very deep, less than a 1/4 inch, just adding some splines of wood here just to, again, give it a little bit more character. When you stain it, it sort of adds I don't know, it's not a huge difference because I'm using the exact same colored wood. I could have gone with a darker wood or something like that, but as you'll see further on, we actually darked this a dark stain, so having a dark wood wouldn't have made that much of a difference because we are going to be staining it the whole top dark. But just having the grain go in a different direction at those areas it just sort of adds a little something. And here I'm just using the little hand plane to get the majority of the wood off without hitting the, making sure I don't hit the cross grain and doing a tear out. So I'm just making sure just to try to get the bulk of the wood off, and then the rest we'll just sand off with the Arbro sander. Which of course I give that job to Brenda because, she loves sanding. And then we, of course, we do a little bit of final touch sanding by hand just to get all the little details down, and we get this look here, got everything in place, and it's ready for stain. And here we are staining the top, staining a dark brown, and then we'll stain the whole unit brown, even though it's going to be a light color on the bottom, because we're going to use that dark brown as the base coat and paint it sort of a cream color over top, and then sort of do a sanding, light sanding of the paint afterwards, just to give it an antique look. So here we already have it all painted, and I forgot, of course, I didn't film that painting is painting. And here's just to give you an idea of what we're doing to give it that antique look. It's just a matter of sanding some of it off at some areas and make it look nice there and nice and antique looking. And of course we need to do some clear coating finishing, so just using the Varathane clear coat, water-based, a few coats of those for the top. And we're going to use some paste wax for the drawers so that it glides nicely in those wooden slides. And anyone, you can use candles for this later on too. If people don't have a paste wax at home and you find that it starts sticking, they can just use an old candle or something like that to make it slide nicely. Doing the slide test here. And for the final touch, we're doing the felt pads, gluing them on with CA glue to make sure that they do stick on there for good. And here's the finished piece. We didn't have a chance to bring it into our own home to take a picture, but the customer that we sold it to was nice enough to send us a picture and in their home to see what it looks like, and I think it came out pretty nice. Now, for those who follow our channel, you probably noticed that this is an older video, so we had to redo it because there was a copyright strike on it, so I just redid the voiceover, but unfortunately we lost all the sounds from the equipment and things like that. But I hope you enjoyed it anyways. If so, please hit the like button, and if you haven't already, why not subscribe to our channel so you can see more videos that we make here. By clicking on the notification bell, you'll get a notification every time we put out a new video. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.